is Steve Colbern. And Steve Colbern is a chemist and chief materials scientist with 20 years of industrial experience. He is currently working in areas of carbon nanotubes. Steve Colbern has analyzed several alleged alien implants that the late Dr. Roger Lear had removed from his patients and has uncovered startling findings. So I spit this out. Steve's research discovered that these objects contain carbon nanotubes and other nanostructures, indicating that they are sophisticated nano devices made by a lethal level of nanotechnology far beyond that of current mainstream earthly science. Steve is constantly being asked to research and evaluate specimens that people bring to him. He takes his scientific research very seriously and is dedicated to proving the truth about nanotechnology and all it contains. His website is alienevidenceinc.webs.com. Please welcome Steve to the show this evening. Good evening, Steve, and Happy New Year.
Hi, it's Loris. Happy New Year.
Yeah, it's good to have you back on the show. I know you were under the weather last week, and I think you're slowly making progress, getting better, right?
Yeah, I've had what the media described as the Australian flu.
Wow.
And the first few days were pretty hellish. It was, I've had the worst body aches I've ever had with the flu. It's like not just annoying, but extremely painful. And fever, the usual fever, and just headache, discomfort. Luckily, no nausea. But then I got what appeared to be strep throat, and had a solid 2 weeks of sore throat.
Gee.
And it got so severe at one point that I looked for antibiotics in the house because they wouldn't give me antibiotics. My first visit to urgent care, they were cracking down on unnecessary antibiotic use or something in California. It's crazy.
It's ridiculous.
But, couldn't find any penicillin-based antibiotics, so I remembered I had some sulfa drug that I ordered from Amazon, and ran across a paper when I was researching its use on sore throats from 1945, where they said to dump it on a piece of fresh chewing gum and roll it up and chew it, and that actually like a time release distribution system for the drug, and works like a charm. It takes the pain away in a matter of minutes. The only catch is that it comes back after you a few hours after you stop chewing the stuff.
Well, that's fantastic. That's very good information for anybody who's out there. I think they say zinc is supposed to be good for that also, but that's a nice little trick you learned.
Oh yeah. Zinc's also very good for anything to do with the immune system and sore throats and all that. But this seems a lot stronger, at least temporarily.
Yeah. So how do they know it was the Australian flu? What, did they test you?
Well, that's what's going around right now. They didn't test me, but
because they have all kinds of strains, like type A, type B, or whatever the hell they are. But yeah, so I know there's all kinds. It's just like a big mutation of, I don't know, regurgitated crap and bioengineering and who knows what, right?
Yeah, it goes through these days government labs, and it used to go through various animal strains because the flu is a polyspecies virus, and then comes out and infects a human, and you never know what you're going to get.
Mm-hmm. Right. Your life's a box of viruses. You never know which one you're going to get. I'm laughing, but I don't know what else to say. But yeah, I'm glad you're feeling better. I truly am. And yeah, I know what it's like to be under the weather or having something going on where you just don't feel right. So I'm glad you're back, at least a little bit here. And you seem like you're doing pretty good. So I'm glad you're joining us tonight. And I also know you've been busy. Also, you have some, I don't know if I should tell everybody or not. I know you've got some things on the burner right now. You have some things on the burner. I don't know if you can share any of that or not with the TV or no.
Yeah, I can share some things. Things are heating up a little bit in the interest in the alien research. I'm doing an episode of a new TV show right now for the History Channel, where they want to know more about the alien implants. I can't say the name of the show. It's a new show,
okay.
But the episode I'm in is going to be out sometime during the summer, from what they were telling me.
Very good, excellent. Have you started filming yet or no?
Yeah, we filmed a sequence. Yeah,
excellent.
We're going to film some more in February.
Oh, great! That's wonderful news. All right.
Another producer contacted me saying that he had an $800,000 budget to produce a new show, and wanted me to be a consultant on it. So that was good news. Well,
that's really nice. You know what? I'm very happy for you because, I've been pushing you for a long time as far as promoting you. So I'm glad that you're getting the recognition you deserve. I also wish they had respected my documentary, Either a Disclosure in Covert Technology, because that's an accurate case, and it's been completely ignored by mainstream. But I'm not going to get into that. But it just pisses me off, though.
As well.
But you know what pisses me off? That's a legitimate case, and because it's high profile, it got ignored and shoved under the carpet. But one thing is good, that once you're out there, people are going to start understanding that that you're the real deal. And the thing is, you did the implant analysis and for my documentary as well, which is a good thing. So maybe they'll start taking a look at it. Unfortunately, I had people in the high profile music industry who were able to do a lot of damage control and cover their tracks very, very well. But I am glad to hear that you're doing that, and I'm wishing you great success with it. I think it's going to be really good. And also, the fact of the matter is, this isn't a game. I think most people are treating the alien implants like a novelty, like it's some kind of entertainment, like it's just something to watch on television. This is the real deal. People are getting inducted, whether it's through covert military or through extraterrestrials, and there's a lot going on with people, and their lives are changing forever. So it's a big deal.
Both.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's mostly aliens, but it's somewhat both too. I mean.
Yeah.
Scuttlebutt has it that the covert groups are getting alien technology, so you may not be able to tell the difference between an alien implant and a government implant anymore.
Right. That's right.
This is serious business because they can at least if abductee reports are accurate, and I think they probably are, they can do things like access your sensory information, like hear through your ears, see through your eyes, hear what you're thinking, and influence your behavior through these implants. So it's no joke.
No, it's not. I mean, I went through it. So, yeah, I know you know that. But, yeah, no, I understand very, very clearly how they covertly brain hack people and interconnect them. And also what's really interesting is that some of this technology you're talking about, yeah, it is reverse engineered. And I do believe that, and I've talked about this and we've touched on this on the show, that we are star beings. We are star people. We have alien DNA to begin with. We're hybrids. And what they just do is access that aspect of who we are and pretty much mind map it and brain map it into templates insofar as reverse engineering a lot of who we are. Because, when you have a soul and a spirit, you're an immortal being anyway. So there is technology there. A lot of it's cloaked. And, you talk about the cloaked, the DNA, that's some of it is not dormant. It's actually very, very active if it's hit with the right frequencies.
Yeah. Well, there's supposed to be ways to turn DNA on and off very quickly that the aliens know about, and
right.
There's some indications now that I have no idea what the mechanism is, but there's some indications now that you can actually change the DNA remotely through radio signals.
Yep.
DNA acts as an antenna, and somehow it can be changed remotely. At least in bacterial experiments, that's been the case. And I'm not one to argue with a well-conducted experiment, unlike some people, but we just don't understand the mechanism yet.
Right. Well, that's what's really interesting about that is, that's the whole idea behind covert intelligence, is to try to control and manipulate a target or a host and actually try to morph them into something else. I talk about the EEG cloning and heterodyning, and that's exactly what it's about. It's that same transmission of signal that's been modulated in the waves that are modulated in association. So very, very interesting insofar as what they're doing, but it's also the warfare program that I address, because mainly what we're seeing here and what I've experienced is the warfare program is about remotely brain hacking and controlling a target to do your bidding. And the one thing I also wanted to mention was, I sent you, I don't know if you saw the link I sent you, but I sent you something about some of the stuff that's going on with Elon Musk right now and some of the satellites being, right. Now, some of these satellites seem to be, in my opinion, obviously more than covert and maybe something connected. I would really, really hope that they would be connected to something that would be an interference satellite against people who are misusing remote access insofar as remotely controlling or accessing a target. And I would really like to hope and believe that some of this technology they're deploying would actually create, like I said, an interference or maybe even take down some of these satellites that are used for mass mind control and remote brain hacking. I don't know what your take is on that.
I'm not sure what to believe as far as which side they're on, but I
right.
have a gut feeling that these new Iridium satellites that Musk's company is launching have something to do with that program, either enhancing it or interfering with it.
Well, see, I get the same thing also only because I can't really tell you guys, but I probably have contacted, I know I talked to you about it and I have mentioned it on air that I've been really on the ass of DC for many, actually since President Trump has been into office, about some of the covert technology. And I've sent an awful lot of information. I also contacted Elon Musk 2 years ago. So what's really interesting is that I'm seeing some of this stuff, and I'm not saying I'm responsible, but I will say I do have evidence and I do have information that blows their freaking personnel out of the water. And the thing is, if this is what I think it is, then that is a very good potential to disable the technologies that were used and abused and misusing, and literally remotely attacking and deployed onto many, many targets and people who were being interconnected with artificial intelligence, controlled, manipulated, assaulted, brainwashed. This is a big deal. This is what we've got to go after, and I really, really hope that that's the case. And if not, I'm going to be going after them again and telling them and reminding them that there are human rights, civil rights, and universal celestial rights that are being violated by these misuse of covert warfare programs. And that is also a starseed thing, too, because as we are extraterrestrial in design, we're hybrids, we're being violated by even being here, by being on this world. We become attacked.
Yeah, it's a violation of terrestrial law, although they wouldn't enforce it, and it's also a violation of interstellar law, I'm pretty sure.
Mm-hmm. Right. No, I agree with you 100%. That's why I'm going after it. I'm going after it tooth and nail, and I don't care. Everybody probably knows that by now. So, I wanted your take on that because I thought it was really interesting. And the fact of the matter is, everybody's kind of woo-wooing over the artificial intelligence now. I think you probably have seen some articles here and there about now they're even making it more erotica insofar as the AI, and they're using them for like exotic dancing and robots in the Middle East, and all this crap that's going on. They're glorifying the idea of artificial intelligence, but that's not even artificial intelligence. That's just a robot programmed algorithms.
I'm really not too impressed with the AI, the so-called AI they have now. In fact, right. I read an article about a year ago that according to them, and I think I agree with this, every AI system that they've studied so far is, in the final analysis, just a fancy lookup table. It may act intelligent, you may think it's intelligent but it's just a very complex lookup table. It can't create anything.
Exactly.
Which is the definition of intelligence, as I understand it.
Yeah, and I've always said it's only as good as the programmer. It's always as good as what they're doing to it. Yeah, no, I totally agree with that.
I know the aliens. The aliens don't have AI. They have sophisticated computer systems with sophisticated programs that are connected to minds, and that's how they get their computers intelligent. Whether true AI is impossible or whether they just consider it too dangerous, they don't use it. I know that.
Right.
It would be true AI. It would be extremely dangerous if you could get it. I hope they never get it.
No, they're never going to have access to. No, go ahead.
I think it may be impossible with current silicon-based digital technology, but other technologies maybe could do it. But I think, whatever the case might be, I think you have to have components small enough to interact with the quantum vacuum, and you have to have it scalar and analog in nature, not digital, in order to do it.
That's right.
You're
spot on.
I'm not sure you can.
You're such a smart scientist. I love that about you, Steve. And I will say, I appreciate your brilliant mind. And what's interesting is the symbiotic interface. So some of the things we talk about, and even in my book, Eye of the Remote, I talk about the ascended machine technology, which is not from here, the off-world species machine, which is really what they're looking for. That's what they're after, and that's the one that they can't control or manipulate, and that is the one that has a consciousness because it's connected to source, creation. So that's a different animal altogether. But also, when I look at what we are, even the technology I was interfaced with, I was aware that they were using their version of an interface, but I had the initial signal, and my signal comes from my Merkaba signal, and that signal is not from here. So we are the aliens. We are the extraterrestrials. I have no doubt we're extraterrestrial beings in our spiritual design work in our Merkaba. Not, you know what I mean? So
coming to that conclusion more and more. I think that we were probably created down here from existing hominids by genetic engineering as a slave race, and have been modified in various ways by other races ever since for the last 100,000 or so years.
Yeah, what I'm seeing is more and more interference patterns, interference insofar as the way I see this world right now is a holographic design work, and I think we probably touched on this before in the show, but I see it as we are literally, it was a clean slate of a hologram. Mankind pretty much has created his own reality in this virtual field, in this biodome, and has created a mess, as far as I can tell, through his own belief systems, false belief systems, indoctrination, whether it's religious institutions or corporations, they're all the same thing. It's all about control, manipulation, and brainwashing mass collectives. So that's what I've seen. And also, we can't forget what's going on with the lunar base, because I keep cueing people to the fact that the lunar base has a lot of control mechanisms over there that can remotely control and modulate frequencies to distort everything here. So I don't know if people are aware of this or not, but I'm very, very clear on that. So that's something that I'd like your insight on, and what your perception is of that.
I'm not sure what the government has on the moon, and I'm pretty sure that there's a joint alien government base on the near side of the moon in Mare Vaporum. There's a huge alien complex on the far side, or just about dead center of the far side, and either that there or underground near there is where they have their shall we say, transmission point or continuity point for this sector for the alien hive mind, and they can hook in abductees through that, and it's a communication center. They communicate with ships through there, and it's a large complex that does a lot of things.
Makes a lot of sense to me. You know what I've noticed also is that through this communication system and some of the stuff that I know about with the synthetic telepathy, what I've noticed that the covert intel likes to do is run interference insofar as if they know you are a natural telepath and they know you're capable of doing and traversing celestial energies of the cosmic design, they'll try to hijack your own neural circuitry and interface you onto their version of technology so they can run interference and also derail you and divert you into their communication system as their hive collective versus the off-world. I know it sounds really kind of out there, but it is really what they're up to. It's almost like they're trying to create their version.
It makes sense that they would try to do that. Yeah, they try to copy everything the aliens do as well.
Yeah. They're mimics, and another thing is I think people are trying to say that the extraterrestrials are the mimics. It's covert intel that mimics. So that's another thing. That's a real giveaway. And this is another thing I wanted your opinion on. I know you've seen a lot of UFOs, and I have to tell you, I've never really seen a UFO. I've seen drones. I've seen a lot of things, and I've been picked up by various programs. But what I notice is that some of this technology that's out there, in my opinion, that's floating around that people are using night vision to observe, is literally nothing but our black space program. And also some of it's a lot of lights in the sky. And I've also noticed that there's an inversion going on with the biodome insofar as our ionosphere goes, that it's so weaponized that everything is almost like a mirror. It's bouncing lasers off. It's like the lasers are bouncing off the mirrors insofar as the biodome goes. I don't know if you noticed this or not, but it's not like they're real craft. It's actually more about the warfare program and the lights coming in from some of the technologies that are out there. Do you see that at all or no?
I don't know. All I know is during a Skywatch one time with third generation night vision binoculars, I saw approximately 15 craft that were obviously objects in orbit that were some of which are doing very advanced maneuvers that would be impossible with chemically fueled rockets. They like a sinusoidal maneuver around the orbital path, or slowing down to about half the orbital velocity, then accelerating again to orbital velocity. I mean, you just can't do that with chemically fueled rockets or satellites that we have now. And you could maybe once theoretically, if you put a bunch of fuel in orbit for it, but these were doing it multiple times, and the objects looked from their orbital period to be about 500 miles up, and the image was big enough where they did show a visible disc. I mean, they were of a substantial size, and one of them even flashed back when somebody flashed a laser at it.
That to me sounds like our space program completely.
Well, it's pretty hard to tell the difference. I mean, all I can say for sure is that they were clearly advanced spacecraft in orbit. Whether they were alien or not, I couldn't say. But somebody's up there.
Yeah, it sounds to me like it's reverse engineered and more than likely a version of the real deal. So, the reason I say this is because I find it odd that any extraterrestrial would sit there and wink somebody with their ship. That's government. That's military. That's Navy. I'm sorry, it is. That's just their protocol. Now, I could be wrong. There could be some out there waving and saying hi, but I do know from my own experience with even off-world species, that's not how they function. Now, another thing I'm looking at also is it sounds like, did you see?
There's been quite a few experience or reports of aliens doing just that, and why wouldn't the government maintain radio silence and not return a flag?
Well, it just seems odd to me that that's their form of communication. It strikes me as that's so military. That's just so military. That's just my perception of it.
Well, it just seems they're basically a high-tech foreign military. That's the way I always describe them.
Yeah, I think there's a huge mix with the black space program, though. I really do. But who's to say on that level?
I agree. I think it's both. I think that it may be in fairly low orbit like that. It may be mostly ours. I wouldn't be surprised.
I'm under the impression that our entire atmosphere, our orbit, is completely saturated with not only space junk, but so much crap that's connected to our black space program that they are creating a barrier for anything to try to connect in to even try and be a participant with the star beings, with anybody who's tuned in and switched on. And this is another thing when we talk about, this planet being under control or manipulation through not necessarily a prison planet, but a frequency fence to some degree, keeping people here because they want only a certain percentage of people off planet. And if you don't have the right, I guess, if you're not in the right boys club, girls club, then you're not going to be able to leave this terraform rock I call Earth. And that's just what I see. So I don't know what your perception is, but I really think that there's wars within wars happening right now. And I do see it almost like a membrane around this Earth to a point where you tear that thing, you use some kind of a nuke or whatever, you're going to wind up seeing a whole lot of different craft. I don't know what your take is on that at all.
I'm not sure what you mean by a membrane, but
it seems to me like there's
they definitely, I think, are taking some steps to try to keep people from contacting the star beings or aliens, and I definitely don't think that they want more than a very small percentage of people going off planet and seeing what's out there. I completely agree with that.
Yeah. And, it's like a shield. That's why I see it's like they have a shield that's mirroring everything and bouncing everything back right down to the radio signals transmitting out. In other words, even people who are trying to get signals generating out off planet, and I've said this before on different shows, but literally it's like they're bouncing everything back to the Earth, but it's not going out. And that's deliberate. So that's what I mean by running interference in these particular organizations that are doing it. So this has all got to stop. I mean, in my opinion, the manipulation, the desperate manipulation to control and manipulate a reality that's not even valid has to stop so that we can get the hell out of here, that we can keep progressing and ascending out of here. We're not supposed to be here. I say it a billion times over, and I'll say it again. Nobody's supposed to be here, folks.
I think that on the other hand, I think that I'd like to get out of here too and develop a more advanced society. But I think the government is right in the sense that most of the people down here don't belong out there.
Oh no, because they've been dumbed down. But the problem with that is the way they've been socially engineered. If they're looking for the reason why mankind is messed up, look at their belief systems, look at their programming, look at the indoctrination.
Social engineering.
Absolutely.
Yeah, if we'd been indoctrinated in a positive way all this time, we might be ready by now.
Oh yeah, well the problem is they did it deliberately to sabotage. This is a whole orchestration. But what I've seen is that there are beings like us, which I say about the 3% star being consciousness ones, who can't be brainwashed even when we get subjected to torture. And those are the ones that are the real celestial off-world types, which are really just, we're done. And I say this a lot because it's true. So
I appear to be immune to it, and so do you.
Oh, I'm way immune to it. I'm immune to it to such a level they're desperately finding other avenues to try to take my ass down. I'm not even going to. I kind of touched on it here and there, but I'm not going to talk about it on air. But it gets worse each year. We're in 2018 right now, and things have to change on this world, and things have to change drastically for the better. We've got to take down these organizations that have been misusing and abusing the privilege of having access, first of all, to covert technology and exotic technologies, and also any access to what they perceive as an extraterrestrial. Because in my opinion, I think anything that was off-world was initially taken, exploited, extracted, data was extracted, and probably more than likely tortured. I think that they've been doing nothing but harming off-world species, if you ask me, and I think it's hitting them in the butt right now. So I don't think they're friendly to the off-world race.
Whether they're real or not is another story, but there are actually movies, film clips available of what purport to be government operatives torturing ETs for information.
Well, I believe that happens to us. Okay, even contactees go into military abductions in my lab. So for extraction purposes,
they re-abduct people to see what the aliens are up to.
That's right.
Try to get more information.
I mean, I've been through a lot of them. Well, I can't even talk about half the crap I went through, but it was very torturous. It was very disgusting, and I'm people have no idea, but that's another scenario altogether. But I will say one thing: this is the technology that deploys it, and we have to get a grip on these technologies. So, yeah, it's very interesting, and I think that they were talking about 45,000 feet, the SpaceX launch, which is another thing they're looking at. I don't know what your perception is on that. I'm just wondering about a lot of things.
What?
40,000. Somebody said, was it 45,000 feet that the SpaceX launch, so far as their how high they go? So
they go a lot higher than that. Orbital altitude's at least 100 miles. But
I'm going to have to find that article.
About 45,000 feet, you're encountering maximum dynamic pressure with a conventional booster, or are about to.
Let me find that article, and I'm going to pass it along to you in a minute. Well, there's definitely some things I wanted to touch on with that, but I think that there's some critical data that's going out there, and I think that it's time to to disable all the black satellites and start to realign things accordingly. That's just my own impression. I think that it needs to happen yesterday, personally. So we'll see what happens with it.
Yeah, of course. I mean, they shouldn't have satellites up there for mind control. That's just.
Well, they're just beaming anything. The signals, the scalar waves you've talked about. Even some of the things they're doing, even here with the microwave towers and then the 5G and all that. That's just kind of low, if you ask me. That's like low end stuff. But the other stuff that they're capable of doing is just very destructive. And you're talking mass hive collective control, and it's also torturing people to a point where you're trying to shatter their DNA and their electromagnetic field. And I think that's the weapon of choice. And I've talked about this as a weapon of choice for military in the battlefield now. It's remotely controlling everyone and everything from a little joystick somewhere. I don't know if it's S6.
I think they have a low version of hive mind control right now. And one thing they torture people to do too is I hear they can create separate personalities by extreme torture.
Oh, you bet they can.
They like to do that and create if you don't have a personality that can be controlled easily, they can create one that's more cooperative.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they do that all the time. Well, I also know that EEG cloning, that's what you're talking about, because some of that technology, in the old days it was a little more primitive, but now it's very smooth with signals, as I've touched on before. But it's all about that, heterodyning onto a target, mixing the signals, and then overlaying it onto a healthy brainwave. And what you're doing is you're creating a personality or a persona to overlay and integrate into the other one. And yeah, it's done through torture and it's done through abuse, and it's not pretty. So I know that we have those of us who are not from here, or you can call contactees or whatever. Sometimes they have natural, what I call alters, but also I think they're not really alters. They're more like aspects of their soul extensions, like what I call soul extensions.
I know the aliens do that too, without torture, without invasive.
Yeah, because we're multidimensional, and that's the thing is we have to remember we're multidimensional. I don't care if people tell you you're linear, you're not. You're multidimensional. You live in multidimensional space, whether you like it or not. We operate on frequencies. That's how we function mainly, through frequency. We have a bioelectric field. I mean, I don't have to tell you this, you know this, but literally that's how we keep progressing through our ascension process, and that's why they keep attacking us through signals, because the signals are modulating their version of a wave to control, manipulate our frequency, and keep us in a stasis while we're trying to ascend or keep progressing in consciousness, and that is no good. So it's a war within a war, and it needs to end. It needs to end yesterday, and I'm hoping that it does. But I'd like your impression of we kind of touch on this now and then when you're on the show, but I always like to talk about North Korea a little bit, because everybody's freaked out about a potential war and also a nuclear war and saying, oh, it's inevitable. I don't really believe that, but what's your take on that?
Well, I don't think that war is ever inevitable. It's always people's attitude that push towards it. I think that if it becomes inevitable, it becomes inevitable shortly before it occurs, when the paranoia is so thick you can cut it with a knife, and everybody's worried about what everybody else is doing, and the whole weight of the paranoia kind of drags one party over the cliff towards launching an attack. But until that critical mass of paranoia, or whatever you want to call it, is reached, I don't think that war is ever inevitable. It's always you can always almost always negotiate your way out of it, but it depends how much people want to. In this case, however it might feel good to bomb the you know what out of them, I don't think it's a good idea, because they've got Russia and China potentially on their side, and even if we did. We probably have to nuke them in order to knock them out, because their stuff's all underground, and I'm not even convinced that a nuclear strike would wipe them out totally. But in any event, if we wiped them out totally, most of South Korea and a lot of Japan would be destroyed, and that would cause a world economic collapse that we can't afford right now. So even if we won, we would lose. So I think we should negotiate on this one. I think if they wanted to knock out North Korea's nuclear program, they should have done it 20 years ago during the Clinton administration.
Right. Well, I'm well aware that we have capabilities to remotely disable their ability to launch. So that's something to look at, whether it's through an electromagnetic pulse or something else. They can easily via satellite remotely disable the ability to launch.
Well, they have quantum potential weapons too. And I'm pretty sure the U.S. government has those by now. If you have intimate knowledge of the enemy system, you can actually make it do whatever you want. You can make it. You can start to count down and make them unable to stop it, even if they cut the power. or you could make it so that it's totally inert, even if all systems are go.
Well, see, that's the syncing up of the satellites, too, because that was one of the reasons they synced up a lot of these satellites is to remotely control and remotely access globally, not just about information and technology and transmissions and frequencies and communication. It's more about control manipulation, remotely hacking, remotely accessing, going through back doors, getting through firewalls. So, and that's probably they're classified beyond, that kind of stuff. But we all know about it. This isn't anything new. And the funny thing is, I think that the government's kind of stupid in a sense that I don't know what they think we're working on all the time. Beings like us, like what do they think we're made of? Because honestly, it's not just about doing the research. It's about talking to the right people and just having common sense and breaking down the technology. And also those of us who've been exposed and have had experience with this technologies or versions of it can easily break it down and say, well, we used it for this, or they used it for, this type of a program. We know what they can do with other things. If you can brain hack somebody remotely, you sure as hell can access something else remotely. Anything electrical, anything with a circuit's going to be able to be accessible. So it's just common sense, Steve?
Yeah, I would think that it would be, excuse me, probably more difficult to brain hack than to do a quantum potential weapon effect on a less complex system. I think it might just require more power in the second case.
Well, they did it to me, so they didn't have a problem punching a hole through my head, and also using the interface program.
Yeah, I think hacking your brain would require a lot less power than hacking a missile.
That's true.
Remotely.
Yeah. But yeah, it's a very, very interesting how they can use these technologies. But I would say also that it's not just the U.S. that has that capability. Obviously, it's other areas and other superpowers, and even some of these other areas that are in the black, basically black trade, insofar as selling on the black market, so to speak.
So far, China, the U.S., Israel, and Russia are supposed to have these Tesla-type scalar weapons.
Yeah, I think he distributed some of that, didn't he? Didn't he send some over to Russia and bits and pieces here? It was like compartmentalized, some of the technology.
Tesla is a national hero in Russia. He was not appreciated in the U.S. until fairly recently.
Oh, yeah. The only reason I think he's being appreciated now is because of all the people in the truth media kind of pushing the Tesla, because they were ignoring him for the longest time. Everything was always about the other guy. Was it Edison?
They tried to write him out of history. That's how much they tried to ignore him.
Well, it's the same thing they're doing right now. They're trying to erase our history as Americans, too. We've never existed. Oh, this is offensive. Oh, that's offensive. You know what? All of that offensive stuff has formed our country. So you can thank every one of those beings who died for it. Honestly, I'm so sick of it. So, you know where I stand with that.
I think that people ought to deal with their own crap. I mean,
clean your own garden.
You should not be allowed to alter history in any way, shape, or form.
I agree. Let it lie where it is. I totally agree with you on that one. And also, it's about respecting those who are no longer here. You don't know. They weren't there unless they're time travelers and they were actually there and worked side by side with these generals and these beings who were there fighting these wars. You don't know anything, people. Just leave them alone. Let them rest in peace, for crying out loud, and have some respect for the dead. That's what I have to say about it, because I'm sick and tired of people bitching about the past when they weren't there to even be part of it. And even some of their ancestors more than likely were, and I'm sure their ancestors wouldn't be very happy about some of the things that are being done and said here in this country and across the world.
They have a totally different culture back then. Even some of the people that these social justice warriors claim to be fighting for would probably have thought that they were being ridiculous back then. It was a totally different culture.
That's what I mean by an inversion. Everything is just upside down, inside out. But I think that President Trump is doing a very good job for the most part. I do. I think he's doing a really good job, and I'm really, really running the energy for him to make sure that he does, as he goes after all these pedophiles and all these creeps and all these scumbags, he's got to hit the guys who are doing the covert mind control, the psychotronic weapons, the crap that I was subjected to, the crap that got shoved under the carpet. He's got to address it, and he's got to go after those people because they are the smoking guns. These are the people that are behind the scenes in mass mind control, manipulation, Manchurian programming, and remotely brain hacking, and also spying into people's homes, because when you hack into people, you can see and get any access you want to their technology, their passcodes, their bank accounts. I mean, you don't even have to be in their computers because you're in them. So it's a liability beyond words. Okay. So, yeah, that's the big one. That's the big one they need to go after. That's the big old whale, Steve. That's the one they need to go after. I kept telling them, you go after the technology, you go after the artificial intelligence array system, you got them. And that goes for these other people that they're trying to arrest right now, even like the Clintons. All these people have access and have information and understand the technology I'm talking about. And I'm sure, whoever else is out there.
Well, I predict that the Clintons are going down, even though it's a long, drawn-out process.
Oh God, it's ridiculous. It's like a crap that doesn't flush.
The Titanic has hit the iceberg, and it's just a matter of time. But it's just taking longer than expected. I predict.
Well, they've been basically, I think it's because they've been running damage control. I mean, they've been doing their best with mainstream media and propaganda out the wazoo to just distort everything, to create this battle and tie everything up, whether they're trying to stick an attorney on somebody or something else. I mean, it's typical BS that they're trying to run to avoid their own crime. Point fingers at the innocent so you can avoid your crime. That's no good. Let's get these SOBs once and for all. I'm an American, but these guys, I don't know why they even were in the illusion of being in the president's office or anything else, because they don't even qualify to be part of that. They're not Americans.
They're just interested in the money. They're like people trying to hostile take over a company so they can take it apart and sell it. I mean, they're not. That's all it is. They're not people that are friends of this country at all.
What's funny is I don't think they really left a legacy for their children or their grandchildren. As a matter of fact, I think they left a really bad karma matrix for them. So, once again, people should be very careful. Go ahead.
The only reason they're still free, in my opinion, is because half the people in high positions in government are in on this conspiracy, and they all support each other.
Yeah, that's true. They all sync together too. That's the beauty of it. Cowards run in packs, I always say, but when you get one, man, it's like a domino effect. They all go down. So, Humpty Dumpty. You can try to patch them all together, but guess what? It's going to be a mix of a lot of BS.
Oh yeah, when one of them that's got a lot of information sees that a couple of his cronies have gone down to lengthy prison terms, they'll be falling all over themselves to cooperate and finger the others.
I agree.
You'll see.
Yeah, I see the way I see it. It's high treason and it's war crime oriented. They've committed a war crime. So we need to, and I've touched on this. I know this is like a broken record to everybody, but it really isn't. It's something that people need to understand, that this is war criminal activity. We're dealing with war crimes here, and this needs to be addressed.
The corruption of yesterday was like them taking a few cookies out of the jar. Now they're trying to sell the entire jar, and sell us out. And after a point, there ought to be some monetary limit or something. After a point, even financial crimes, if it's big enough to affect the entire economy, become treason.
Oh, totally.
If you ask me.
Yeah, I totally agree with you on that one, especially stuff that Obama did when he was in office. I can't believe he got away with half the crap he got away with. And he's waltzing around. I think he's watching himself. I think he's walking on crackers now, to be honest with you. I think he understands very clearly that he's going to get screwed over at some point. The ride can only go good for so long until eventually it implodes, especially when they're doing that kind of damage.
They're just this whole Clinton, Bush, Obama cabal that's ruled the country for the past 30 years, and now they're in the early stages of imploding.
Right.
At least I think so.
No, I think so too. I think that, but you know what the thing is? They've realized that they're going down. They just want to take as many people as possible with them, and it's very, very sick that they're doing that. Instead of trying to help, they're trying to be a detriment. And I can't stand people like that. Let some people survive, for crying out loud, but they don't want to. They want everybody to be broke, in poverty. They want a third world country. They want America to be gutted. They want to pretend they're gods when they're just subhuman entities with a lot of access to covert technology, information, and money. So, just disgusting. I never thought, we touched on this before, but I never saw any of this coming. I never realized the world was like this. I never thought we would ever be here on this timeline looking at the world this way, seeing it like this.
I get the impression that George Bush Sr. might be one of the ringleaders, if not the ringleaders, of this whole Clinton.
Oh yeah, he is.
Thing.
I think he's almost senile, isn't he? I mean, he's like in a wheelchair. I mean, isn't the guy kind of?
I don't know. He still seemed pretty sharp the last time he was on TV, but
maybe it's his brain implant. He's probably got interface going on. He's probably remotely controlling his ass.
Maybe.
Yeah.
He's pretty old now. He's like 93.
Yeah. Well, that whole legacy is just imploding once again. I think they're realizing it, but they'll just run away or they'll hide or avoid it. They've gotten away this far, but I like President Trump because he's going after a lot of this stuff.
Yeah, I can't point to one thing besides maybe stirring up North Korea a little bit more than I would have liked that he's done, that I've disagreed with. He seems to be like an old-fashioned boss that says what he's doing and tries to do what he said he was going to do what he said he was going to do.
I think he's smarter than people realize.
Do some good.
I actually think he gets it.
Smart.
And I also think he gets what I'm talking about with the covert technology. I really think he gets it, and I'm so happy he does.
He gets that, and I think he gets a lot of the economic forces that are bringing us down.
Because I'll tell you, Steve, I don't know how many times I've contacted DC after the initial induction I went through in 2004, right? And then I contacted the Obamas, and I told you, instead of him doing anything about it, he was accelerating the artificial intelligence program. Now we've got somebody who's looking at it differently. Now we've got somebody who understands that these guys are crooked, dirty SOBs. They're misusing this warfare program, and they're using it, and they're actually, giving the data, which is beyond classified, to people who are like Muslim Brotherhood oriented, dirty people, so that they can deploy it even further globally. So yeah, it's a monster out of control, and I think he's going to start cutting some tentacles off. I really do. So, he's not alone.
Arresting Bill and Hillary would be a good way to cut a large tentacle off, I would think.
Oh, he's got to get all of them, and get Jarrett, get all of them. They started a little cabal over there, and it's disgusting.
Well, sure,
they're embarrassing.
Get all of them, but I mean, you said cut tentacles off. I think Bill and Hillary is a major tentacle.
They really are. Yeah, it's a big disservice to the world. There's no doubt about it. Yeah, and I still think Hollywood. I think California should be nailed too. I really think they should be fined out the wazoo. Something should happen over there with all that propaganda in Hollywood. Something needs to happen.
Well, Trump was right on the money too, in saying that the licenses of these fake news major networks ought to be looked into. I mean, yes, they have the right to free speech, but you have certain responsibilities if you utilize the public airwaves. You do not have the right to deliberately spout lies over the public airwaves. I'm sorry, but you just don't.
Oh, I agree. Well, that was all run by the CIA.
That's why they have licenses to do that. That's why not everybody can do that. They have to have a license from the government because there are requirements that you must fulfill. Not lying is one of them.
Yeah. Well, the CIA runs Hollywood anyway. From what I understand, they've always been the manipulators behind the scenery. And I'm not saying all of them, but, I really say the majority of our issues right now are run by CIA. In other words, all their propaganda has really come into fruition to become this major distortion and literally sabotage the United States. So I think that President Trump will go after the alphabet agencies, and he's going to have to use, he's really going to have to go through each one and each personnel and go step by step and get rid of the bad apples and just give the promotions to the good guys.
The FBI ought to be number one on the list, I think.
All of them. Yeah, absolutely.
Fiasco. Now Sessions is acting up, and he's acting like he's not going to prosecute Hillary and all. He ought to go. He had to light a fire under his rear and say, you're either going to prosecute Bill and Hillary and see what a jury says, or I'm going to fire your sorry rear and get somebody who will. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, they need to get rid of those star chambers too. They need to get rid of all these people in their secret organizations that have been doing this and calling the shots underground. All that stuff needs to come up.
It should also be a big time 30-year federal felony for anybody that belongs to a secret organization with loyalty to itself to join government ranks, or at least above a certain level.
Yeah, no, I see that too. Yeah, he has a lot of house cleaning to do. Like I said,
It is in Germany. In Germany, it's against the law for these secret societies to exist. It ought to be against the law here.
Well, the problem with the secret societies is that they became contorted and twisted and mangled into psychotics. I mean, mystery school teachings were never meant to be used that way, ever. They were never meant to be evil. They were meant to be enlightening, to help you evolve and grow and spiritually evolve. It had nothing to do with what's going on with these guys.
Well,
so,
it happens with a lot of things, but the fact is that they are evil at this point in time. And, and also, you could argue that they shouldn't be in there anyway, because the oath that you take when you become part of a high-level government position is to protect and defend the Constitution above all else, and without any mental reservations or anything like that. And I would certainly consider a loyalty oath to a secret organization to be a mental reservation or a conflict of interest.
Right. No, I totally agree with that. It's just like the Islamic agenda. That's a conflict of interest too. Comes down to it. It's ideology. They have no business.
Somebody that really believes in Islam beyond just being an Islamic in name only should not be in the U.S. government.
I totally agree. It's just time to clean house. It's
a subversive organization.
Well, whenever they're destructive, whenever they're trying to control, manipulate, and destroy other people because they don't believe the same way you do, or they're raping and molesting children, you've got to look twice at these things. And you can't overlook it because they're wearing a cloak and saying it's under our religious indoctrination program, just like the Vatican is a perfect example of perversion and distortion in the name of God or Christ.
The minute you're saying with a straight face that you're going to advocate violence against anybody that's not your religion, I think you give up your right to protection under freedom of religion at that point. At least that's the way it should be.
Yeah. No, I believe in self-defense, but this stuff is just abuse, bullying, pushing people around and using a religious cloak to do it. So that's got to stop. All that crap's got to stop. And of course, the propaganda too, politically correct, all this crap. It's all the garbage, but it's all coming from mainstream media. All of it's indoctrinated from the mainstream media, mainstream hack scientists, mainstream psychologists, mainstream, academia. They're the poison arrow, seriously. So we've got to deal with that and address it and counter it and say, screw you. We're not playing your games anymore. So, and I think that's what's happened, and that's why there's a division going on. But we've got somebody in D.C. right now who is willing to step it up, and he has. So I think that it will change, and I think that once he goes after that one thing, he goes after that big AI, he's going to find that he's going to have more control and more power, and everybody's going to be yielding, and things will change overnight. But I will say one thing. Don't say people are mentally ill. Don't say people are having nervous breakdowns. Don't say, and I'll talk about you, Steve, the people that are out there flipping out and having all these programs running in their heads are that is strategic, that is engineered, and that is connected to this program I'm talking about. So it's got to be stopped. It's destroying this country. It's destroying everybody. It's got to stop. So that's my main thing. And of course, I think a lot of that has to do with the Project Paperclip, and some other things prior. What you were talking about, it is true about true extraterrestrial intelligence. They are naturally telepathic, but not this way. Not with the communication system that they wire in. So. Well,
the ETs have equipment to amplify their natural telepathy too.
Right. Yeah. And of course, these guys have their own scalar version of a lot of crap and some other things they're using with carrier waves and everything else. So, yeah. I mean, it's just one big fiasco at this point in the continuum. And that's why when people say, I'm hearing God talk to me, I'm hearing this person, and I hear it more and more people saying, I heard the voice of God. It was I just saw this the other day. They're doing a documentary on that guy, that cult leader, and he was hearing the voice of God. Okay. Oh my gosh. And I looked at that and I thought, this guy must have been plugged into the technology, because that's what it sounds like. It's like a communication. It can be anything. It can be a God, it can be a demon, it can be an ancestor, it can be all kinds of things, It takes on, it's an entity, but it's actually manufactured, and it's not a demon, not what you would consider to be a demon or Satan. It's man's version of something. But I just see it more and more, Steve, and I'm starting to see these red flags everywhere, So, and then anybody who denies it, I just want to knock them out, because I'm like, you cannot deny this stuff anymore. It's technological warfare, dude. Can't stop it. So.
Well, I mean, telepathy is basically just stimulating the brain with the proper frequencies of ELF scalar waves, and stands to reason that it would not be all that hard to do. You just have to know the right frequencies.
Well, I don't know about you, but I do know that people that I've talked to who claim to have had telepathic communication, they can hear the communication, but they can't respond telepathically to them. It's not a conversation that goes back and forth nonstop.
No,
I don't know.
I've had that. I mean, 90% of telepathy is nonverbal. You just you understand what they want you to do, or you just have your behavior influenced, and you don't know it was telepathic until after the fact.
Right.
But yeah, if it is verbal, in the rare cases where it is verbal, you can't really respond. No.
No, I was going to say, a lot of people that I've heard communicate, insofar as the way they say they're getting communication, is just that they hear something, a command. Okay, it's a command. It's a remote command, but they communicate back, I guess. But it's really not the intimate interface that I am familiar with the artificial telepathy that I've been exposed to, because I had a live handler real time who basically programmed me into the technology. He was there, and then he interfaced me onto the AI. So it was very different. I guess the only blessing of that whole thing was, Steve, is that I knew it wasn't an extraterrestrial that was doing it. I knew who my perpetrators were, or who the perpetrators were. So that gave me a lot of clarity. Wasn't some little green man.
You'd probably be better off with it being an ET. They care a little bit more about whether they hurt you or not.
The problem is that I know we're hybrids to begin with, and that's one of the reasons I think I was pulled into that program, because my wiring was way different than your average bears to begin with. And I think that was just made it more interesting for them to pull me in. And actually, it did help their technology, because it made it look really good, as I've touched on before. So, like I said, it's just, there's so much to it. There's so many levels to these projects that people have to use these with wisdom, enlightenment, and they have to be monitored insofar as regulation goes. And the people that have been pulled in as test pilots and guinea pigs they need to be paid. They need compensation and restitution for damages. And I'll tell you point blank, it's just for the damages. So long-term effects of that stuff.
What gets me is how the government's willing to spend billions, sometimes trillions of dollars on all this way out military-related stuff, but they balk at spending a few thousand to compensate people.
Oh, well, you know why? Because it's admission of guilt. That's the problem. And they have to admit they did it. They did. But we're going to have a break. Everybody listen to Ravenstars Witching Hour. I am Solaris Blue Ribbon. My wonderful guest tonight is Steve Colbern. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.